Okay. I'm going to call this meeting of the East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee to order. And this meeting is recorded by video and audience in accordance with state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such that an in-person meeting of the building committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. Okay, that being said, we need to take a roll call for attendance. And then we need to mention who else is here.
Attendees. Okay. Jonathan Pope.
Here.
Thank you. Ben Lummis.
Here.
Thank you. Richard Sapphire.
Here.
Thank you. Greg Catamatori. Not here. Kathy Clancy.
Here.
Thank you. Donna Compton.
Here.
Thank you. John Dunn.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Frisch. I don't know if I saw him. Okay, not in attendance. Matt Fusco.
Here.
Thank you. Grant Harris.
Here.
Thank you. Joe Lucido. I think I saw him. Absent. Jameson Manning. Saw him. Amy Pasquarello.
Here.
Thank you. Adam Roselle. Not here. And Katie Eunice. I don't think she's here. Okay. And additional attendees, I have Brad Dorr.
Here.
Thank you. Michelle Rogers.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Hermanka.
Here.
Thank you. Mark Lydon.
Here.
Thank you. Myself, Chris Tremblay. Here. John Rich.
Here.
Thank you. And is it just Maria?
Maria Puglisi. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I got everyone.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So the first order of business is the approval of the minutes of our meeting on June 30th, 2021. And is there any corrections or omissions? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
That we approve minutes from June 30th, 2000.
Second.
Okay, a roll call vote, Chris. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, just writing this down. Jonathan Pope.
Yes.
Thank you. Ben Lummis.
Yes.
Thank you. Richard Sapphire.
Yep.
Thank you. Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Thank you. Donna Compton. Donna, you're
Yes.
muted. Yep. Thank you. John Dunn.
I will abstain. I was not at the meeting.
Thank you. I'll note that. Matt Fusco.
I was not at the meeting either, so I'll abstain.
Thank you. I'll note that. Grant Harris.
Yes.
Thank you. And Amy Pasquarello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it carries 8 in favor and 2 abstentions. Do we have invoices?
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay. You
We
want-
have one invoice from Doran Whittier.
Okay.
I think you can see here.
Yeah, good.
Okay. The total amount is $182,453.62. And there's a nice summary here that kind of simplifies it, but they're billing 44% for the construction documents, which is an appropriate amount for the work that's been completed so far, 100% for the early release package 1, which is fully complete, 75% for the early release package 2, which has currently been released in draft for review. So that would be fine as well. A few $100s for the radon design, which has been initiated with McPhail Associates, and the invoices for that are attached. Let me just look to the amount here for the soil testing that is part of the allowance here. We have 15,000. They're billing 2,750 for the work that's been done over the past few weeks for that. And there's $1,303.62 in printing, which was a result of the request from City Council for items that they wanted a hard copy on.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the invoice from Dora and Whittier, number 26, dated June 30th, 2021, for the amount of $182,453.62. And I so move.
Second.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussions or questions? Okay, seeing none. Chris, could we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Jonathan Pope.
Yes.
Thank you. Ben Lummis.
Yes.
Thank you. Richard Safar.
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Thank you. Donna Compton.
Yes.
Thank you. John Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Fusco.
Yes.
Thank you. Grant Harris.
Yes.
Thank you. And Amy Prescarello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it carries unanimously. The next order of business is the OPM update.
Well, since we gave an update last week, there's really not much to update for this particular meeting, but we have had the subcommittee meeting past Tuesday to review the value engineering. So that's the main thing we want to cover at tonight's meeting. So I know that they met and they prioritized the value engineering items that were presented to them for review and have voted on which ones they want to prioritize to include in the revisions for the design to bring the current design within budget. And I think Brad from Dora and Whittier is going to go over the results of what was selected.
Okay, we should probably just go right to that. We did meet last week. There's probably not too much new, except last week we talked about the value engineering and the prioritization, and the subcommittee met on Tuesday and reviewed the actual costs of each of them and have made some recommendations. But at this point, I think we'll turn it over to Brad to present that to the committee. The subcommittee. Well, I'll make the motion when we get to the after the presentation. Okay.
All right, well, I will try and share my screen here. So maybe if Mary,
Marie.
give that permission.
Should be all set, Brad.
Okay, let's see if we can get the
And
right one here.
I'm sorry if I could just interject. Jonathan, could we just state who was at the subcommittee meeting, which members?
The subcommittee was made up of Joe Lucido, Amy Pasquarello, Ben Lummis, and myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can everybody see my screen right now?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
since many of the building
It's better if
committee,
it were bigger, though.
I can make it a little bigger. Yeah. Oh, not too big, otherwise I won't be able to tell you what I'm talking about. How is
That's good.
that good? Okay. So actually, many of the building committee members that are here tonight were actually members of the subcommittee as well. So this will be a little bit redundant for you, but I'm just going to go and give the committee kind of a higher level process overview. So the process is that when we get to the various submission dates for the MSBA, those being schematic design, design development, 60% construction documents and 90% construction documents, we go through and we do also at the same time a budget reconciliation where Dora and Whittier is the designer, has an independent estimator that goes and estimates the drawings and specifications, as does WT Rich, the construction manager. And in this particular instance, we also had some input from CBR Erie as well. So a little bit of belt and suspenders there, having 3 estimators took a look at that. But what we ended up with here, as you can see where I'm kind of circling with my cursor, that was where we landed in terms of the reconciled estimate. And if you go down here and look where my cursor is now, that actually is the budget that was set at schematic design and ultimately approved by both the city and the MSBA. So as you can see, we're about $2 million off. And we had talked about this kind of leading up to this most recent estimate, as many of you are familiar with, right? There's been a significant change in the marketplace for construction materials. As I mentioned to the subcommittee, if you've been to Home Depot recently, and try and buy a piece of plywood, it's very different than it was, 6 to 8 months ago. And so it's not super surprising to the project team that we had this. We're a little disappointed that we had to do it, but understood that it was coming. And so you have to go through a value engineering option in order to take where we are with the reconciled estimate and bring that in line with the approved budget. And when we looked at this, of the 2 million, approximately 1.5 million of that was related to steel escalation. There really wasn't a lot in terms of the change in the design. As the design evolves, we have some contingencies that are set up to accommodate that. But by a large extent, this was all driven by the volatility in the market. Perhaps on bid day, some of those things may kind of adjust and settle back down a little bit. But for the time being, we need to make sure that we're taking the conservative and appropriate response here, which is to make sure that we're designing to the budget. And right now, we'll be looking at moving forward to the 90%, okay, which is in about 8 weeks or so, 6 to 8 weeks. And we'll be having another check-in to see where we are. But for right now, what we had to do is basically take just under $2 million out of the project through these value engineering options. So what the project team did is we looked at a whole host of different potential options, and we categorized that, as you can see over here, in categories 1 through 5, which really, starts at ones that while it says preferred, we would prefer not to have to do any value engineering, but they're preferred in terms of the value engineering options that were uncovered, all the way down to 5. And so we went through all of these. Ultimately, we looked at seeing, what we could do to get this back in line with budget, and we're able to, as you can see here in the summary, get it to a point where in category 1s and 2s, we were able to achieve our value engineering goal. So this is what, in turn, we presented to the subcommittee. We presented the whole host of options 1 through 5 and went through each of one of those as we're going to do tonight. Does anybody have any questions kind of on what and I'm sorry, and one other thing just to say is that with respect to the options that we're going to be looking at and considered and ultimately that we're recommending, or that the subcommittee is recommending for approval tonight, none of these options impact the educational program or delivery of the school. So with that, does anybody have any questions with respect to the process? Okay, I'm going to take that and I'll try and walk through these with everyone. So what we've done here, this is the entire list of all of the options. Here's kind of what the options are. And here is the kind of the categorization of those, 1 through 5. I've highlighted in green the 1s and the 2s, which get us to the point where we are actually going to be able to meet our value engineering objective. So my goal tonight is to really go through all of those. And, I'll go through, there's a whole bunch of them. So I'll go through, try and describe what they are. At the end of that, I'll ask if anybody has any questions. If anybody has questions, we'll try and respond to that. If nobody has any questions, we'll just move on to the next one. And again, we're just for the time being, we're going to go through 1s and 2s, and then we'll see if we have any questions at the end. Okay, so I'm going to start off here, okay, with item number C-01A, which is delete additional allowance for precast seat walls, no seat walls at the entrance. So what this is at the entry of the building, we had scheduled a number of granite seat walls, and we considered taking those out and replacing them with precast, or we considered taking them out, which is this option entirely. And that would represent a savings, okay, of just under $640,000. And the notion here was that, you know, to the extent that at some point in the future, if those needed to be added back in, they could. They're pretty much kind of a pack and play type item where we can go and plug those in later. So if we find that, you know, we could consider these as a potential alternate. So if we find that we actually have money on bid day and we want to plug those back into the job, we'll have that opportunity at that time if we determine that this is an alternate that we want to proceed forward with. So that was for a value of approximately $640,000. Any questions on that particular item? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the next item, C02, which is replace specified promenade plank pavers with a unilock paver. This was a fairly easy one for us because the promenade plank paver is actually a unilock paver, so it would just be a different flavor of paver, if you will, and we're confident that we can do that. No degradation in quality, no degradation in maintenance. It's just like we're picking a different, like I said, a different flavor of basically the same item. So that's worth approximately $38,000. Any questions on that item? Again, these are at the front entry of the building.
I just didn't realize that pavers come in different flavors. That's all. But thank you for the
Could be
clarification.
strawberry, could be chocolate. They're all really good though, Ben.
Thank you, Brad.
Yep. Okay, no other questions. I'm going to move on to C03. Reduce 25% of the athletic surface on the bituminous paving, which is the asphalt paving, primarily around the back of the building where this actually occurs. So what this is we have areas scheduled in the back of the building where we have some play area that might have things like Foursquare or, you know, different types of games that would be on the hardscape in the back. And this is really the surfacing that goes on top of that. Very similar to almost like a tennis court surfacing. And so what we would do is we would, you know, we do a little trimming here and there to try and get the overall quantity of that surfacing down by 25%. I think that's pretty reasonably attainable. So we're confident that we can make that happen, and that represents a savings of about $19,000. Any questions on that item?
Yes, Brad, the 25% where the bituminous paving would be eliminated, what type of surface area would remain?
So we actually, Rich, we actually wouldn't be reducing the pavement area or the asphalt. We'd only be reducing the amount of the surface area, kind of the colored area on the top. If you think of West Parish, kind of where the maps are and some of that. And so we would just have to, instead of it, you know, it covers a very large swath. We actually might, you know, drop that down to where the actual games are, you know, kind of put a box around the game almost, if you will, and have that area be the area where the surfacing goes on top. Does that answer your question? Okay, any other questions on item C03? None. I'm going to move on to C05, okay, which is utilizing Western Cedar in lieu of e-pay on the raised planters. As you'll remember, you know, in some of our site discussions, we have a number, I believe we have about a dozen raised planters, you know, for part of the program here. We're not actually going to be eliminating anything. We're just changing the wood type. In fact, I think we use wood cedar at West Parish. Ipe is a pretty bulletproof type of wood, but we're confident that we'll see no degradation here. Any questions on that? The savings there is about $28,500.
John Dunn has his hand up.
Oh,
Yep, I actually have a comment. I have to pull off in 2 minutes to get to another meeting. Do we have to take votes on this? And
Yes, we do.
if- Okay,
Yes.
so Jonathan, do we have a quorum if I pull off? I may be tied up for about 15, 20, 25 minutes.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have just a quorum now, John.
All right. I will come back on at the end of the BNF meeting. I just don't know how long it's going to take. It should be fairly short. But as we know, you expect a short meeting and all of a sudden it is not.
Yes. Well, we got a ways to go on all of these items. There are quite a number of them, and I will be in touch with you.
Okay.
And
So
I would just like to point out that, I'm sorry, that all of these were, presented, all of these ideas were presented at the last school building committee. So John Dunn has seen these ideas. It's just a matter of what the final ranking was by the subcommittee.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I have to bang off now, but I will be back on. Thank you.
okay, so we're actually on item C06 right now, which is to reduce the planting budget by 20%. So to establish a new design target. We don't know exactly what that would be yet because we haven't designed it. But we know that kind of given the amount of dollars that we have in the bucket that we can achieve that. You won't have as many plantings. This is also something that to the extent, we find that, pricing may have changed. We could easily add those back in or it could be accommodated through an alternate process. And the level of savings for that item is just under $83,000. Any questions on item C-06?
I just have a comment to make on that. When you go back and look at the redesign of that landscape, maybe if it's possible to substitute some of the plantings for plantings that are local and perhaps less expensive, that maybe that could be accomplished as well, besides just reducing the number. Is that something that will be considered as well?
Yep. In fact, kind of the local indigenous species, drought resistant, all of those types of things are already being considered as part of, kind of our landscape lead program. So certainly we're going to continue to do that. It's good point. Any other questions, okay, on this particular item? Okay, moving on to C07. Changing the decorative stone surface to decorative gravel. Really, this is stone, right, that's used in certain planting beds. It's used in the retention area, and it's reducing just the aggregate size. And as a result of doing that, we're able to save just about $41,000. Any questions on that item? Do I have that right? Yeah, $41,000, yeah. Okay, similar under the rubric of landscaping, we have some landscape boulders that similar to the granite seat walls that we earlier spoke about, is taking those out of the job. Those are at the front entrance and a couple other locations. We would try and, if to the extent that it becomes available, if we find some suitable types of boulders on site that we could use in place of that, we would do that. Again, this is something that could be added later or accomplished as an alternate if we have money in the job. And that's worth just about $52,000. Any other questions on C08? Okay, moving on to C09. which is changing out the bollard type from stainless steel to either a galvanized and or painted metal. And here we're not talking about reducing the functionality of the bollards, spacing of the bollards, the number of the bollards, just replacing the type of bollards from stainless steel, which obviously is, you know, very low maintenance. Galvanized is still a very good product, very common. And that represents a savings of about $78,700. Any question on C09 bollards? Bollards for $78,000. Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to item C10A, okay, which we had a number of benches that were scheduled. And what we're talking about here is deleting 4 of those benches and including 2 of the existing buddy benches that you currently have, okay, at the school. And that represents a savings of about $38,000. Again, benches can be easily added later in the project to the extent funds become available. Any questions about C10A?
What's the total number of benches that are on the project then?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. It may just be the 2 at the moment. Okay.
Okay.
I think there were 6. Sorry. I think there were 6 originally.
Right.
Right, and you're eliminating 4, so there are 2.
Right. Okay, moving on to item C12. At the front entry at the bus loop, we have a decorative gate. We would be changing that gate to something that's more like a gate with a chain link fence infill. And that was a pretty nice gate. We see that we're able to save approximately $35,000 by changing it, changing the schedule from the decorative gate to the chain link gate. Any questions on C12? Again, easily changed out, right? If we find that at some point in the future, you know, pricing has changed. So item C14, this is really kind of just a technical question in terms of how on the interior of the loop in the play area in the back, how the artificial turf is actually fastened and edged. No one will be the wiser with this. We're just changing that from 12 inches at a certain location on the ends. We worked that through with the landscaper, not a lot of savings there, but about $3,500. Any questions on C14? Okay. C15, we had a number of trash cans, right, that are powder coated metal that were scheduled into the job. Those would be taken out of the job. The intent would be to replace those at some later date, and that represents a savings of approximately $21,000. Any questions on C15? Okay. Item C16, there's 2 fences currently along the 128 edge of the property. One belongs to the state, one belongs to the city. The one that belongs to the city is in kind of tough shape, so we were planning on changing that. Here, we're going to maintain the fence. However, we're going to reduce the height to what it's currently at, which is 6 feet. It was scheduled at 8 feet. And when we drop that down to 6 feet, we see a savings of almost $11,000. Any questions on item C16? Okay. So now moving out of kind of the site landscape area, we're moving into the structural area. Okay, the item that was up for consideration here that fell into the category 1s and 2s was to use recycled crushed concrete where we could in lieu of structural fill. This is something that we typically do on projects, just hadn't really crept into the design yet, but we're able to save approximately $62,500. No change in functionality or quality, a little bit greener. So all around, there's some value in that particular value engineering option. Any questions on item S05? Okay, moving into the architectural schedule exterior, item A03 says utilize calcium silicate stone in lieu of granite base. Really what that is that's a cultured stone Ariscraft type product. Ariscraft is a brand, so there's a number of different brands that are out there that we could look at. It's similar to what we actually have on in some areas over at West Parish. And with that, we actually have a savings of approximately $43,000. And this would be, kind of at the base of the columns and at the base course of the building. Any questions on that particular item? Okay. A07 is to change out the current modular brick that we have to a larger brick. Modular bricks are very traditional. And if you go to a larger brick size, what that does is it means that the mason can lay it up a little bit faster. So we're looking at changing that brick to have, proposing that brick would be essentially the same color, same texture. It would be a different size, either a utility brick or a Norman brick. Not sure about what that particular size is. But with that, we have a savings $100,000. So that's one, though, if we proceed forward, that would be difficult to kind of switch back on. Not impossible, but it's a timing issue. There's a lot of go along that when we have to think. So that one is, if we make that decision, we're probably going to end up sticking with that. Any questions on A07?
I do want to mention that it's not the same texture as the brick that we chose before. We'll have to go back and look at the different available larger size bricks for color and texture.
Okay, and we would obviously present that to building committee again once we on something there. Okay, if there's no additional questions on that item, moving on to A08, which is to delete mock-ups. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll actually build mock-ups for things like window installation, brick layup, waterproofing, those types of things. And rather than having a standalone, we would actually do this on the building. And with that, we actually would have a savings of approximately $32,000. Do that a lot. Any questions on item A0? What we're talking about here is in the stairwells, which are a little bit more isolated, is to retain the concrete block in those areas, but it wouldn't be a ground face block as that we would have in Main Street. We would actually paint that out with epoxy paint, which is a very durable paint. But since it's not, as in the kind of limelight, if you will, we would propose to go and have that changed out for a savings of approximately $40,600. Okay. So item A24, okay, what we're talking about here is to take some of built-in the FF&E loose permit. This all we would actually save so we'd have to go and
Oh,
I kind of lost my screen.
so Brad, are other folks having trouble hearing Brad?
Yes.
Yep.
Hear every third syllable.
Okay, hold on. Can you, my connection is unstable, so well, I'm gonna try and reshare my screen.
You might want to not have video on. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, I'll drop off video too. Hold on. Oh no. You're sharing your screen. You can't readily get to the stop of the video. But can you hear me now? Everything going okay?
Yeah, but do you see up there, there's
No.
a green bar? You should be able to get to it. Above
Yeah.
your screen.
Yeah. Got
There
it.
you go. Right.
How's that? Is that any better?
We'll see how it works.
Okay, can you hear me? How's that?
We can hear you. I can.
Ah. So, you can hear me? Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
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 Okay, if it starts to go dry here again, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. Michelle and I have done this drill already together, and she can pick it up if it goes bad again. So any other questions on A24? Okay.
I don't think everybody heard
We're going
everything.
to
that you
move
had
to
say.
item A25. On A24,
Yes, on A24. So we were removing the window seats and making them
you guys
part
hear
of
me now?
furniture.
Okay,
Brad,
I'm going to go
Brad,
back to A25.
Brad, let's have Michelle narrate. Michelle, can you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
going to bow out. Michelle, you take it over.
do you want to keep your screen up there for a minute?
Yes.
Oh.
So, well,
Okay, all right. So now I need to share. Sorry, all. All right. I'm clicking on my share screen and it doesn't seem to be sharing. Oh, wait a minute. Got it. There we go. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we're on A24, which is this one here. So these were built-in window seats throughout, and we're looking at making those part of our FF&E package. That's the furniture. So they would be loose furniture, and that's a considerable savings to do that work. So were there any questions on that? I know you heard about half of what Brad was talking about.
I would just comment that the built-in benches throughout the building that are not in the classroom are still in the plan, just to point out to.
Right.
That's correct. So those
That's
specialty benches in the extended learning and under the stair, those
They're
are still
there.
part, yeah, those are still part of the millwork. The next line item, which is A25, this is changing tile 2 to a similar product as tile 1. This was sort of a no-brainer. We had assumed that all 3 tile colors were the same tile line. And when it came back, they told us that tile 2 was a more expensive tile. So we're looking at just changing that out and saving $96,476 to do that. So again, no change really to the look or the function of any of that tile work. This is the tile that's on the walls going down the corridors.
Right, only one of the tiles, so.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you're still with us.
Yeah, it seems to be going okay, like if I don't have the shared screen, so I can try and pick up. If I go off again, I'll just give it to you forever.
All right,
Okay,
do you want to pick up
so
A28?
the next one is article A28, which was basically a acoustical ceiling tile. And we're just going to, again, kind of change the flavor on that. We'll come up with a different one, achieve the same acoustical rating, and that's worth a savings of just under $42,000. Any questions about item A28? Okay, moving to item A32. We have a number of metal bookcases that are scheduled, okay, in the media center. These were carried in the job. Actually, typically these would be scheduled as part of FF&E. So we're proposing that we move those back to where they probably should be and carry those in the fixed furniture and equipment procurement. And that's worth approximately $107,000. Any questions on item A32? Okay, then moving on to item A38. This had to do in some of the small group rooms. This is something that the design team actually would want to do. And we're able to go and change out some pocket doors in there to swing doors. From a long-term maintenance perspective, we would prefer to have swing doors over pocket doors. And we're able to do that without changing any of the functionality of those rooms out. And that's worth a savings of approximately $52,000. Is that reading that right? Yeah.
Yep. And again, no impact to the educational program.
Yeah. Okay, so moving into electrical. And this is actually, we'll hit item 2 and 3 here, talking about switching from copper to aluminum. We actually do this fairly often as a value engineering option. No degradation in terms of the quality here. Ultimately, we're not doing this at the distribution level. We're doing this at the higher levels. And we've worked this both through with the electrical engineering consultant. We walked it by with Joe Lucido as well from a maintenance and facilities perspective. And those are worth about $106,000 and $607,000 combined. Any questions on E2 or E3? Okay, so with that, that really kind of gets us to the end of the list there. And you can see, right, that when you take the total of items, all of the number category 1 items, category 2 items, gets us pretty much right on target with what our budget is. We're actually, if all these items are accepted by the full committee, will be approximately $20,000 under budget. So if you go back just to the grand summary for a second, terrific. You can see that that number foots over to this column that we've kind of got highlighted. And you know, the 1993569 is the value of all of those. So you take the reconciled estimate up above, subtract the VE, and then you get down to where it shows that we're pretty much right on budget. So with that, that is the kind of total VE summary explanation. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to respond to those.
Okay, are there any questions or discussions? Comments?
Just a quick question about the steel. Do we know when we'll be able to lock that price in so that we don't continue to be subject to this escalation in costs?
Yeah, so the steel is actually going to be part of the next early release package, which we're planning on bidding very shortly. So we're going to be locking that down, and John Rich can chime in here, you know, within the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, should be. Yeah, right near the end of probably, I think the first or second week of September, we're supposed to submit it to the committee for approval.
Then, John, you had talked about, I think it was you, John, at a subcommittee meeting, a little bit about, you know, the estimate versus potential. This is all potential versus, you know, bidding and some of the pressures that subs experience when they're actually bidding for a project versus when they're just, you know, estimating costs. And that might work at our advantage. But I mean, can you just explain that if I'm
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was me, Ben. Thanks. Yeah, well, I was just saying, you know, the steel numbers we get are based on, we asked some of our subs to, you know, to give us budget estimates. We have good relationships with with several subcontractors. We got some budget estimates for the very specific scope of work that was shown on the drawings and in the specs. You know, we got it from 3 different structural steel firms. And I was just saying that, you know, this is a little bit of conjecture, but there's a possibility that they're a little skittish about what's going on in their industry with the steel. They would probably tend to err a little bit on the side of being conservative. So there's a possibility that when they get in there and they really want to win the job, we might see some tighter numbers, even in the existing, you know, if they would bid it tomorrow, for example. But that's pretty speculative. That's just sort of like a little possible ray of sunshine out there, if you will. You don't really know what's going to happen. You don't really know if there could be further increases in the industry and things like that. But you know, like with the lumber market, you know, prices went up and then they've recently recovered, and the futures are down. So you know, I feel like we're experiencing what I hope is the cap of what we're going to see for the next couple of months. But I wouldn't want to, you know, go on a limb with that statement. So there's some reasons to be sort of cautiously optimistic that we might, you know, when we go out to bid, and we're gonna get that information in about like 7 weeks. We're gonna start getting the first returns and start getting the numbers in front of us. We still have to descope the bidders and make sure we have everything covered to see where we end up with that. So
Thank you, John. And I think, and you know, that's all to say that, you know, there'll continue to be movement on all of this. We don't know, as you just described, you know, which way that's going to be on different things and different timing, but there will be. We should all know, and the folks we work with should all know that there'll continue to be changes and adjustments, both in the market and then what we do too going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, the prices could go up and they could go down, and we really don't. No one really knows what the future will bring. But as John said, you know, we're being hopefully optimistic that we're looking at some of the peak pricing on some of these things, and that there might be some room in the future for some of these prices to come down a little bit. But we have to prepare for what the current state of affairs is. And I'd like to congratulate the whole team really on this VE effort. You know, it's not a fun process, you know, when you're putting together this building and bringing together all these ideas and wanting to put out a really great product for the users, to have to then go back and say, okay, where can we make cuts? But there was a lot of creativity that went into the process, and really thinking about different cuts that can be made that don't really impact the use of the building and the beauty of the building that much. And I think from what I'm seeing from the subcommittee and their priorities, that it seems like there's going to be a relatively small impact on this project. And a lot of those items that are listed can come back in the project if the prices do go down and the market becomes more favorable again. So I think that's really a great effort on everyone's part, and it's happy to see that.
Yeah. Could you just describe the process of how they might come back in through alternates in the bid process?
So when we bid alternates, once the bid prices come in, if the numbers are lower than what we're estimating, we can choose our top alternates that will still fit into our budgets. So we'll know that, you know, when those prices come in. But if the prices are lower at that point, those alternates can be accepted.
Right. But basically, you're putting that right into the bid document. You're saying also, by the way, give us a price on this as an alternate, right?
So,
Correct.
So while you're bringing that up, Jonathan, it's a good time to make the point that we need to be choosing those alternates pretty soon, right? If they affect EP2, that means they need to be in the EP2 documents. Now, EP2 is mostly the superstructure of the building. So I can't think off the top of my head of any alternates we might want. They're going to change the size and shape of the building because we haven't really taken away anything in the VE. So that would give us till the next bid set to to think about those alternates. But you know, you kind of get one. If we did have a good bid result in October, let's say, we're like, oh, I wish we could add this, I wish we could add that. If they weren't identified and bid as alternates, then we lose the opportunity to have competitively bid pricing on those alternates, and they're going to get priced instead as change orders. And unfortunately, I wish that was the same price, I could tell you, but it's unfortunately not the same price.
Yeah, and we'll have to prioritize, okay, those alternates, you know, when we get to the 90% check-in. And, you know, we'll kind of see how it goes. And, you know, like when we were talking about, you know, boulders, for example, those are easy alternates. It's like, you know, give us a price for boulders. But when I was talking about having to change out the brick, it's not just changing out the brick, because we actually have to design, redesign, recourse, and do some additional detailing on that. So some of those, you know, we're going to have to be thoughtful about in terms of how we go about them. But we don't have to cross that bridge today, but we will be when we're looking at the 90% check-in, the prioritization.
And the other thing that needs to be explained too is that we have had a number of contingencies in the budget, and those are still there, correct?
Yep.
That's correct.
Yep. We have we have two that are reflected in the estimate. One is called the design and pricing contingency, which goes to 0. Right, it starts out usually at, you know, 8 to 10%, somewhere around that when we are at schematic design, and then that goes to 0 once the design is completed. And then we also have an escalation contingency, and so for, you know, portions of the job that are still outstanding, we are still reflecting about 2.3, 2.4% escalation. Portions of the job that are going to be let closer, which is going to be like EP2, really back that out. And then obviously for EP1, which we've already gone through and bid, we don't have any escalation there. So those contingencies still remain in the job.
Okay. We just need to get a hold of John Dunn. Is there anything else we need to discuss before we vote?
I don't believe so, Brian.
And you're muted.
Jonathan, while you're working on John Dunn, I'll just say a couple things. So just to read a few things here. Really appreciate that both the product team and then our subcommittee were able to work on this, like, you know, essentially no impact on the educational program, first and foremost. So that's super important. I appreciate that. Another thing I felt we really prioritized was, you know, safety and security. So while we made some changes in materials, we didn't compromise in terms of, especially around the outdoor play area, that sort of thing. And there was just, you know, very minimal impact on sort of overall function. Definitely some design and some exterior impacts of exterior features. No, that's understandable. But even that, as Brian explained, you know, we may be able to, depending on how things swing, may be able to get that back. And then also with Joe Lucito's help, we're conscious of, you know, upkeep and maintenance too. So, still trying to keep with materials that'll have less upkeep and maintenance. So anyway, that's not an easy puzzle to construct, and so definitely appreciate the project team's work on that, and that was a lot of hours, and then of course the B subcommittee too. So appreciate everyone's balancing act on those pieces.
Okay, John Dunn is not available and won't be for another 10 or 15 minutes. We could recess for 15 minutes and come back into session at 6:10. Or we could just keep chatting. But we need to vote on this tonight. The 60% design submission goes in on soon, right?
The 14th, we believe.
14th.
Yeah,
So,
I was just gonna share the contingency. So I pulled up the number from the estimate. So for the design and estimating contingency, we have another $1 million in that bucket. And then the escalation contingency is almost $1 million. So those are going to go to zero when the prices come in. So, of course, we don't know what's going to happen between then, and that we need to be responsible and keep those contingencies in there. But that number right there is basically all of the value engineering that we're doing right now.
right.
So it's nice to know that at least in a theoretical level, there is a potential that if the prices don't come up and the design, continues to stay on track, that all of those items could still fit within the budget that we're VEing right now.
And there's also an onus contingency, correct, Brian?
Yes, that's a completely separate item. Yep.
And construction contingency for change orders.
Change orders.
Right. Yeah, the construction contingency is almost well, it's just over $800,000 in addition. So that's but those are really separate numbers. So the construction contingency is to manage changes that happen during the construction, not from the design standpoint.
I was just trying to make the point that we're not locked into this, that if any little thing happens, we don't have to go back to as things are bid, or you dig up something that you don't like in the ground. We're not going to necessarily have to go back and do more value engineering at that point.
That's correct.
Okay.
I wanted to let you know that Brad just texted that his internet is down again, so he's off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what the weather's like there, but there may be storms coming through, as I was hearing about this morning as I left. So I'm going to call a recess until 6:10. So we can all go have a bite to eat or something quickly. And we'll come back into session at 6:10.
Do you need me to come back on, or are you all set with any questions that you have for this?
Just in case there are questions, but there would be.
Everybody, I'm assuming everybody's here has asked the question that they want to ask, Michelle. So if you just can get past the pure excitement of the vote.
It generally takes me about 15 minutes to get home, so I was going to go home and then I could jump on. But,
Okay.
I'd be right in the middle of your road. So I will, I'll
Okay,
join
well,
you by phone.
This is all dependent on John Dunn being quick at the city council's BNF meeting. So
Sure.
we shall see. All right. So I'm going to call a recess and we'll reconvene at 6:10.
Is it the same link, Maria?
Yeah, we'll keep the link open, right?
Okay, great.
Yes, the meeting will stay open. I'll stay in the meeting and you can just rejoin with that link.
Well, you can
Thank
just,
you.
you can just,
You can just mute. And
you can
shut
just
your
mute
camera
and
off.
shut yourself off too. Unless you're going home.
All right, see you 6:10.
All right, we're back.
Okay. Now all we need is for everybody to return.
Get out on your boat, Jonathan, over there.
My boat
Holiday?
is still in the parking lot. I was going to put it in yesterday, and I said, then I'm coming to Maine, and I'm going to put it in right before the hurricane. I think I'll put it in after. You know, just boats. It's always something.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
sure you
better,
heard.
they're better off on wheels, right, Jonathan?
Dave Barry did a great long story about driveway boats, you know,
Yes, he did. I heard that.
how much more dependable they are.
Wouldn't that fall under the art of yard sailing?
I think he might have referred to something like that.
Yard sailing. That's
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Grant's here. Everybody's, Rich is here. Kathy's here. Where's Matt? Oh, there he is.
Matt's here. We're looking for Ben.
Ben. Give that guy a chance to eat something and he disappears.
He's always eating.
Yeah. Okay, Ben.
Well, I could also share that the move is starting next Monday. So that's kind of an exciting happening, I guess, in the event of this whole project.
Okay, and there was one other bit of news that came up. The lawsuit has been changed. The date has changed to the 22nd of July, but it was going to be done by Zoom or something, and now it's going to be in person, and people can go and watch. I guess that's what you get to do. You don't get to do much else.
And that's at the Essex Superior Court, right, in Newburyport?
You're right. Yes. I don't have the time exactly right here, but
Yeah, Jonathan, this is Ben. I'm on by phone.
okay. All right. So the subcommittee made a motion and voted 4 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend to the full committee that they approve all of the items with the number 1 and number 2 priority as presented by the design team and CBRE Harry and WT Rich. And I so move that we do that.
Second.
Okay. I would just like to say that the subcommittee did review all of the other items, all the number 3s and all the number 4s and all of the number 5s. And so we're aware that should things get worse, we do have some places to go to continue to fine tune the budget should that be necessary, without affecting the educational ability of the building. So.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think the number 3s may have been about another 900,000.
Right.
So significant amount.
So a lot of work was done by the design, by the entire working group, and they should be applauded because I think they presented very good possibilities. The hope is that things change. The hope is that some of these things can be put back in, landscaping things down the road when, when we get there. There may be other funding sources that become available as we get closer to it. Maybe Amy will win the lottery. Want to buy some boulders, who knows? So that being said, is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Seeing none. Chris, could we have a roll call vote?
Jonathan Pope.
Yes.
Thank you. Ben Lummis.
Yes.
Thank you. Richard Sapphire.
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Thank you. Donna Compton.
Yes.
Thank you. John Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Fusco.
Yes.
Thank you. Grant Harris.
Yes.
Thank you. And Amy Pasquarello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it carries 9 in favor, 0 opposed. It's unanimous. Is there anything else that we need to mention before we adjourn? And if not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
Thirded.
thirded. Chris, roll call vote?
Jonathan Pope.
Yes.
Thank you. Ben Lummis.
Yes.
Thank you. Richard Sapphire.
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Thank you. Donna Compton.
Yes.
Thank you. John Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Fusco.
Yes.
Thank you. Grant Harris.
Yes.
Thank you. And Amy Pasquarello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Good night.
Pleasant evening,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Maria.
You're welcome.